Hello there, welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life. We're all about turning positive into a plus, and today we're talking about HIV and Mark King, and he has a new book, and it's called My Fabulous Disease. Mark, it's so nice to have you on the sofa in here.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad I'm here.
Well, I'm going to get into the book in a minute, but let's just talk about you for a second. Tested positive in 1985. You've been working in the AIDS HIV world since 1984.
Yes.
I read that, people were literally dying and writing wills. You started writing essays. Why?
I'm a writer. That's just kind of what I do. It's how I express myself, and it's like how I process, It's like I'm not even sure how I feel about something sometimes unless I write it down and I say, yes, that's it. That's how it feels right now. And so what this book does is it takes essays over the course of 4 decades, and it's like a journal in real time of how those things felt. HIV, but also just sex and love and negotiating the terrain,
Well, you refer to yourself on your website as, I'm an HIV positive gay man in recovery from drug addiction. What's not to love?
That's because that's how my mother used to say, what's not to love,
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important thing, though, because for many of us living with HIV, we figure we're not lovable. There's a whole lot not to love about us. Then you throw in drug use, addiction, and all the other stuff that we love to shame people for, very human behaviors.
Yeah.
And it becomes very hard to love yourself.
And so that's very deliberate that I kind of introduced myself that way on my blog, because I am shameless, and by that I mean I am without shame. About those things that people might take in, and that's taken a lot of work. I didn't come that way. The first thing was to be ashamed of being gay and what that meant, and that took some work. And then came living with HIV, and then later came the drug addiction and recovering from that. All of those things are things about which it's easy to feel ashamed, and I just won't.
Good.
I won't, not anymore.
Good for you. And I feel like if we could all feel that way, that would make life a lot easier for especially those of us living with HIV. My Fabulous Disease, Chronicles of a Gay Survivor, and we should say the website is also My Fabulous Disease.
Yeah.
Why is the disease fabulous?
It's funny. When I first named it that, it was pretty provocative, I have to admit. I was being cheeky a little bit.
Which you're known for being a little bit cheeky.
Yes, I can't help myself.
Yeah, good for you.
But also, I got tired of all of the negative baggage that is kind of thrust upon us, those of us living with HIV, all sorts of judgments and preconceived notions of who we are and what we're like. And I got tired of that. I decided that if this virus is going to live in my body, it's going to take on my characteristics and not the other way around. And I'm fabulous. So I called it My Fabulous Disease.
Touching on something you just said there, you've said, it's something I read in the book. You said it's one thing to become an empowered patient or to stand up for your rights as a person living with HIV. It's quite another to come to terms with your body and your bodily fluids as something with the potential to kill people. That really smacked me across the face when I was reading this. I think it speaks very true whether it was 1985 or whether it's, present day. How did you come to terms with that? And what advice would you offer up to somebody who does have that issue of...
I don't think I ever really came to terms with it. I think that there was always part of me for most of my life, because now I've been living with HIV for almost 40 years. For most of my life, I carried a sense that I was a viral threat.
Right. I think we all do.
And that something could happen, and God forbid, and I don't want to hurt anybody. It's funny because those of us living with HIV, we are kind of perceived as if, we are untrustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
We're just viewed as untrustworthy. If you're living with HIV, clearly there's something you did wrong.
Yeah, exactly. We did something disgusting and sinful.
Exactly. And so you kind of internalize that. You can't help it. Even a happy-go-lucky guy like me can't help but internalize some of that stuff. And I felt like, oh my God forbid I hurt somebody, right? And it wasn't until something that you and I are huge fans of, and that is the message of undetectable equals untransmittable. it wasn't until that science proved it for a fact, I'm getting emotional thinking about it, that it's like I stood a little taller. I had a little more pride. I felt good. I felt whole again. I felt like I wasn't this threat anymore. And it's funny that I needed science to tell me something that I should have felt innately about my own self-worth, without science having to say I'm medically not a threat. I can't transmit but that's what it took. That's what it took. And then I felt better. And so when you say, how did you get past that? I don't know that you can. It's hard to, and that's why it's so important that we just try everything we can to help people access medications, get on them, and then understand the message of you equals you, so that they know why. There will always be those who can't. And what a challenge that is. You know, I know that I am sitting here now, a long-term survivor. It has everything to do with how I look. It has everything to do with the advantages that were just given me.
Yeah.
As my birthright.
Right.
You know, I write about this a lot in the book too, and that is that I think something unfortunate that's happened over the years is white gay men like myself. We got what we came for. We came into the arena and we fought for the drugs and the research and the organizations and the support groups. We fought for all of that, and we got it, and we left. And we left behind a lot of folks that need our help, you know, and, not until everybody can take advantage of the message, you equals you, should any of us stop fighting for it.
Right.
Stop fighting for the opportunity for people to be able to feel the way that I felt when I realized, oh my God, I can't transmit this. I can't hurt anybody.
Yeah. I refer to that moment as someone gave me the keys to the handcuffs that were put on me the day I got my diagnosis.
Yes.
That's how I described learning that science. And you're right. It is shameful that is not a feeling that every single person, no matter their color, gender identity, how much money they have or don't have, should feel and know the moment they test positive. You know, it's devastating. And I think it's why we are still fighting the fight that we have to keep fighting to end this thing. Yeah. You've described that living through the darkest days of HIV and AIDS is a defining period in your life. I mean, how couldn't it be? So how does it make you feel? I'm going to sort of bring it the other way now, and let's stay with the positivity of this. How does it make you feel now when you hear, when people receive a diagnosis and they say, thankfully, HIV doesn't define me, I don't need to let it define me. With everything you've gone through, and that we're here at that point, how does that make you feel?
I'm thrilled. I say, you do you. And if it's not a defining thing for you, I've kind of made it it's so much part of my identity vocationally and otherwise, because it's the work that I do. I'm an activist and I write about this stuff. And so I don't mind having that kind of as a neon sign across my forehead.
Some of us are fine with it.
Right.
And we're doing important work.
That you're doing very much defines it for you.
Right? Absolutely.
That being said, that is my professional kind of public-facing, as they say, persona. You talk to my friends, and the topic never comes up.
No, I imagine.
We're talking about the cats and mid-century houses and tennis, and so I'm with them 100%. It doesn't define me either in my personal kind of life. Thank goodness. I put it on. Mark the long-term survivor is something I do for you. It's something I do for public speaking, and it's important, and I do it. And then I go back and see what's on Netflix and get on with my life, you know?
You talk about that you want this book to really illustrate that, people living with HIV, we're more than just the virus that affects them,
yes.
Right? It's an important message, but people are still feeling that, as we said at the beginning, that we've done something wrong, and that this is all you are now. You are a virus. You're a danger. As someone said to me, there's no point carrying on with this because you're dangerous.
Yes. Well, I can go one better than that. I've been called a vile merchant of death by a commenter. You never read the comments.
Don't read the comments. Don't read the comments.
And because I dared talk about my sex life and being single at the time and what all of that meant, the book is divided into various sections, right? One of them is HIV.
Mm-hmm.
There's sex. There's my addiction and recovery process. There's my family. There's my being gay in general, And so when you ask, why is that important? It's because, we have to go, those of us living with HIV, have to go kind of get fed in that HIV banquet. We need to make sure. But there's a whole spread of other stuff of life. Life is a banquet, right? There's all of this other stuff that we want.
Life is fabulous.
It is fabulous.
If you make it fabulous.
It is,
And you know what? My Fabulous Disease, Chronicles of a Gay Survivor, celebrates all of that and a hell of a lot more. Mark King, thank you so much for joining me on the sofa at Plus Talk. So nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too.
That is going to do it for this episode of Plus Talk. If you want more information or info on the book, go to myfabulousdisease.com. The book is available in paperback and on ebook. Until next time, be nice to one another, please. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.